welcome to Everyday Eddie. My name is Eddie BX. This is take, I don't know, like 8, 9, or 10. Pretty much the main focus of this channel is to talk about how I get by being a budget photographer. Like I mentioned in the first video, photography is a pretty expensive hobby. So I'm just going to tell you my ins and outs, how I do things on a budget, because, you know, everything's expensive. Now, the main focus of today's video is going to be the difference between a full frame camera and a cropped sensor camera. There's many different manufacturers that make all sorts of different cameras and different technology types, whether it's DSLR or mirrorless cameras. We'll go over that maybe in a different video. But one thing that goes across all those manufacturers is full frame and crop sensors. And my last video was pretty long, so hopefully this time around, you know, I'll just go ahead and cut to the point, so I won't have you guys sit around for 10 minutes plus, like on the last one. What was it, like 14 minutes? That was way too long. I couldn't even get all the way through that video and watch. All right, so like I mentioned, the main focus of this video is going to be explaining the difference between a full frame and a crop sensor camera. Now, what a sensor is probably better explained on how a camera works. The way a camera captures an image is by receiving information or light through the sensor, which sits behind the camera lens. And by saying full frame, what we're referring to, or what I'm referring to, is the sensor size, which is 36 millimeters by 24 millimeters. That's what's considered a 3:2 aspect ratio, and it's something that you might have seen in smartphones, on most devices, so smartphones, tablets, and even some smart TVs. Now, that sensor size, the 36 to 24 millimeter, which is the full frame, is derived from the film that was used in the 135 or 35 millimeter film cameras. That was the actual size of the film strip. Well, not the whole strip, but the cell inside of the strip. And pretty much now that's become the standard sensor size, full frame sensor size for digital cameras. On the other hand, a crop sensor is typically 24 millimeters by 16 millimeters. A good amount smaller than its big brother, the full frame sensor. Compared to its big brother, the full frame, it's 1.5 times smaller in height and in width. This is what's referred to as the crop factor. In Canon's case, the crop factor is 1.6. These smaller sensors, or crop sensors, also go by a different name. You may hear APS-C. That's referring to a crop sensor. Now, there is a smaller sensor size that some other manufacturers entertain. That's called a micro four thirds sensor. It's not something that I'm really into or know about, so I won't cover that in this video, probably not in any video. But just want to let you know that there is another smaller sensor than the APS-C or crop sensor, and that is micro four thirds. So going back to crop factor, this is used when determining how a lens will behave, and typically focal length is measured in millimeters. Focal length and lenses are something that I'll cover more in depth in another video. But for this video, let's go ahead and use this cute little guy here. This is my 40 millimeter pancake lens 2.8. I showed this to you on my last video. On a full frame, this lens will shoot at its intended focal length, which is 40 millimeters. But on a crop sensor camera, this will shoot at the 1.6, well, at least in Canon's case, will shoot at the 1.6 crop factor, which is, hey Google, what is 40 times 1.6?
The answer is 64.
So instead of shooting at 40 millimeters, this will shoot at 64 millimeters on a crop sensor. That pretty much went from a not a very wide angle, everyday use type of lens to a more tighter shot. Now, to demonstrate what a crop sensor looks like compared to a full frame sensor, I can't show you exactly what it looks like, but I can kind of demonstrate. So pretend this piece of paper right here is a full frame sensor. I drew a little box in here. That's to represent what a crop sensor is. So crop sensor obviously is cropped, so it's a lot smaller than a full frame. So keep that in mind. The focal length that you see on a lens will never be what it actually is when shooting on a crop sensor camera. You always have to keep in mind that crop factor, whether it's a 1.5 or 1.6 in Canon's case. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I use my cheap Yongnuo 50mm 1.8 lens on my Canon T6 crop sensor camera. Now that is a entry-level camera that Canon has. But instead of being a 50mm, that lens shot at 80mm on my crop sensor, which is an excellent focal length for portrait shots and for more detailed shots. Another example, my 24mm that I showed on my first video shot like a 38mm on my crop sensor, and that's very close to that 40mm lens that's an everyday use type of lens. So that pretty much is the difference between shooting with a full frame and a crop sensor camera. As far as pricing goes, you'll almost always find the full frame camera as a more expensive option and the crop sensor at a more entry-level price. But that's not to say that it's any less of a camera. I still had a blast shooting with my Canon T6. And I definitely learned to appreciate the features that I have now with my full frame Canon EOS RP, which is the camera that I'm shooting with right now. Like I mentioned in my first video, photography is an expensive hobby, so it almost makes sense that you may want to start off with an entry-level camera. And then you can always work yourself up from there. But this all depends on your specific budget. Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fujifilm, and Olympus all have great entries in the crop sensor game at a very reasonable price and all packed with great features. But if money is not an option, then by all means, big baller, go ahead and jump the deep end, purchase yourself a full frame camera. However, having a lot of money to spend doesn't necessarily make you a great photographer. It's more of the eye and passion that you have for photography. Accompanied with some training and know-how, you can really make for some great photos no matter what type of camera you're shooting with, whether it's an entry-level camera or a full frame sensor. I really can't talk about this for hours on end, but like I promised earlier, I'm going to try to make this video short. So that pretty much concludes what I had for this video on the difference between a crop sensor and a full frame camera. If you have any questions or if you have any feedback, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'm also going to post my Instagram in the details below. That way you can follow me on a daily basis and see when I'm going to post a new video. Please comment, like, and subscribe. I will be doing a giveaway once I reach 1,000 subscribers. I'm going to be giving away this Tamron little mini camera bag. I don't know if you guys can see it. It can accommodate a camera with the lens, another lens, and a flash. It's pretty versatile. It can go with you anywhere whenever you're traveling, or if you're going out of town and you don't feel like taking a big camera bag, you can always toss this on your back and go. So instead of it being locked away in my closet, I think it'll probably be best to pay it forward and give it to someone that may need it. So go ahead and help me get to 1,000 subscribers and I'll be doing a giveaway of this bag. This has been Eddie BX and Everyday Eddie. Comment, like, and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Help me get to 1,000 subscribers and get that bag. Get the bag. All right, guys. Peace. I'll see you on the next one.